The New York Times told us several times that they would make sure that my story that I was telling came across. They promised several times that they would do it accurately. They put a negative connotation on it. They spun it to where it appeared negative. I did not have a negative experience with Donald Trump. Donald is doing a great job, and he is a very successful businessman. He's a great leader because of that. He has a lot going for him, let's face it, and I'm supporting him.
I interviewed Roanne Brewerlane, and I'm going to let her speak for herself, but I think readers of the story can digest what happened.
Well, that is the New York Times story they're referencing over the weekend, a story that the New York Times said they talked to dozens of women and came up with this story, Crossing the Line, Trump's Private Conduct with Women. One of the featured people in that story was the woman you just heard from, Roanne Brewer, who said the story was not accurate from her point of view. Trump tweeting over the weekend on the media witch hunt, he said. The media is really on a witch hunt against me, false reporting, plenty of it, but we will prevail. With the coming forward today of the woman central to the failing New York Times hit piece on me, we have exposed the article as a fraud. We will start there with our politics panel. Let's bring in Charles Hurt, political columnist for The Washington Times, Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Charlie, it seems like Trump captured the day on news coverage, and this woman coming out on Fox and Friends seemed to raise serious questions about the New York Times story.
Yeah, and the war between Donald Trump and the media continues. You know, obviously the New York Times spent a lot of time on the story. And what I think is so interesting about it is that at no point did the woman come out and say she was misquoted or anything like that. She said, oh, no, I was completely, they quoted everything exactly right. Everything I said in there is what happened. But they got the entire context of the story wrong in her eyes. And to me, it reveals just this chasm, this massive gulch between you know, the New York Times and what this woman, who was a model at Mar-a-Lago after Donald Trump was divorced, and she was at a pool party, and they had a sort of a ribald exchange, and she came away thrilled with it all. But when you put it through the lens of the New York Times, it becomes this, like say he's some sort of predator or something. And I feel like it really does reveal the larger chasm between the mainstream media and America.
Will this matter? Obviously, we're going to see, Mara, this campaign is going to be in the mud pretty soon, if it's not already.
Well, I think it's already there.
But even more as we get going, and they're officially nominees. Will any of this move the needle?
Well, first of all, I don't think this article is going to move the needle. When you read the article, it was actually pretty nuanced. There was nothing in there that they said Donald Trump did that, to me, rose to the level of calling Megyn Kelly a bimbo or all the other horrible things he said just recently. As a matter of fact, that Roanne Brewer went on to date him. She clearly wasn't put off by that encounter. The article interviewed people who'd worked for him, who he had appointed to high-level positions in his organizations, women. So I think if this was an article meant to expose him as a horrible predator to women, I don't think it succeeded.
Meantime, another story that got a lot of attention was this story that goes back years and years, is Donald Trump is this John Miller, this public relations guy who's speaking for Donald Trump. Take a listen and some reaction from his campaign.
I've never seen anybody get so many calls from the press. I worked for a couple of different firms, and I'm somebody that knows, and I think somebody that he trusts and likes.
Why the media is spending so much time going back 25 years old to talk about People magazine tape that may or may not be Trump. The tape is not proving that it's him. The justification for the tape is, well, words that are on that tape are words Donald Trump uses. I've been working for Donald Trump for 6 weeks. I'm using words he uses.
Paul Manafort. Obviously, Trump back then told People magazine and apologized, saying he was the guy. Is this anything? Is it just crazy that this has become part of this campaign?
Well, it's not crazy in the sense that this is a man who was known to the tabloids in New York, but not nationally. It isn't as if, like Hillary Clinton, he's been in the national public eye and investigated for 30 years, so you want to learn about it. It's a bit of a weird story. Last week I wanted to make John Miller my winner of the week, but we don't know where he is. Look, I don't think it's an important story. I think part of the Teflon around Trump is that it is not a story. It's dead. It's been overridden by the next story, the one you were talking about, the one in the Times. It looks as if the Times had 50 interviews, spent a lot of money and time, knew it didn't really have a story, came out with exactly how Mara describes it, a story that was nuanced, interesting, but there was nothing scandalous about it. If this is the best that the Times and the press can do, trying to create scandal around Donald Trump, it's a time to plan for the inauguration.
Meantime, President Obama at a college graduation, listen to what he says about the good old days and the current presumptive Democratic nominee.
When you hear someone longing for the good old days, take it with a grain of salt.
My husband, who I'm going to put in charge of revitalizing the economy, because, you know, he knows how to do it.
I think we know a little bit about how to create jobs. I think my husband did a heck of a job creating jobs back in the 90s.
So back in the 90s, Mara, what about that?
I think this is a tricky thing for Hillary Clinton. She's in Kentucky. He's very popular there. He won the state. I understand why she's invoking him. And the memories of the 90s and the economy in the 90s are positive. He did have a lot of jobs created on his watch. But to say you're going to put your husband in charge of the economy, that just doesn't make any sense. She's in charge. She's going to be the president. Now, she did say at other times, as she's been campaigning in the coal belt, he's going to be in charge of these particular communities and revitalizing hard-hit manufacturing towns. That's different. But to say you're going to put him in charge of the economy, I think that's kind of dangerous.
In part, doesn't this, Charlie, have to do with her comments about coal in West Virginia?
Yes.
And she's trying to buffer that with mentions of Bill Clinton.
Absolutely, and I really think that coal remark will go down as her version of Mitt Romney's 47% remark. And what's amazing about that is that, of course, Mitt Romney said that at a private dinner, and he didn't think he was going to be quoted. She says it in front of an auditorium full of people on national television, and I think it probably reveals really what many in the Democratic base want to do to the coal industry. Charles.
I think that's right. It is the ultimate gaffe. She said what she really believed, and she's been running away from it ever since. There's no way to run away from it. It will definitely hurt her in the general election in Appalachian coal country. I think the idea of putting her husband in charge, she has this tricky deal. She wants to run on the glowing memory of the 90s. On the other hand, the minute she brings it up, all the other stuff in the 90s comes flowing in, and she can't. There's no way to avoid the second when you invoke the first.
By the way, those Bernie Sanders millennials, they don't know a lot about the 90s.